This episode of The Inspiration Show is extremely special because the incredible Brie Leftwich is joining me. Brie is a dresser and a playwright and is currently a dresser at the Outsiders musical on Broadway. Brie is an incredibly talented multi-hyphenate and has been such an incredible inspiration of mine. Thank you so much, Brie, for being here. It means the world.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So, when did you discover that you had a passion for the arts?
I always kind of did the arts. I started ballet. I was a dancer first. I did ballet for when I was 3 and kind of just like did that all the way out through high school. And it wasn't until like I was 6 years old, I want to say, that I found my love for theater. My parents were kind of like, oh, we can't like she should maybe do things that aren't just ballet. Like we should like broaden her horizons. So they enrolled me in theater camp when I was 6. And I was actually a year like younger than like the like when I was supposed to start at my theater camp. I think you were supposed to be like going into first grade, and I think I was going into kindergarten, or I had just like I don't know, it was something weird, but I had gone to see a show at the theater, like the theater that my camp was at. And I told my mom, I said, I really want to like do this. Like I want to do what they did on stage. And she was like, well, you're not old enough to like, do it, but maybe we can think about it for next year. And I was like, but I like really want to do that. Like I want to do that. And so she's like, okay, well, like, there's the director, like you can go talk to him and like we can see. And so my little like 5, 6 year old self was like, excuse me, like I really want to do that. But my mom says I'm not old enough. And he's like, oh, interesting that this child wanted to like come and talk to me about doing this. He was like, I mean, like you can apply, like we'll like make an exception, but like yeah, do all this stuff. I think I had to like write an essay, and I was 5 and I didn't know how to like write. I was still like making my R's backwards. So, um, but yeah, I always kind of had this like passion for it, and I just I've always done the performing aspect of things. And then I think I got into like the more behind the scenes stuff when I was a little bit older. I always knew about it and I always had a love for like costumes and stuff. I think that comes from ballet, but yeah, I've always just kind of been an art kid.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, like, the writing the essay at 5 years old, that brings out the playwright side in you, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah, my mom had to help me with it. I was like, "Oh,
oh,
okay."
what would you say really inspired you to explore your love of the arts, and who has been an inspiration of yours throughout your career?
Um, repeat the first question one more time. Sorry.
What inspired you to explore your love of the arts?
That's a great question. What inspired me to pursue my love of the arts? I guess like I've always just I don't know. I think I just always had a love for making things. Like I was always a very creative kid. I don't know. I think I just really like knew that I wanted to do it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead. In terms of like people who inspire me, most of my ballet teachers growing up, some inspiration from them. One of them being Eva Zasbo. She is my wonderful ballet teacher from back home. She taught me the importance of having passion in anything you do, and she was kind of a person that just I always took her advice like to heart. Another person was my drama teacher, both in middle school and in high school. My drama teacher in high school is actually the person who like got me on the playwriting track. I she My friend at the time had given a script that I wrote to her without telling me, and I got a call into her office, and she was like, "Hey, like, so your friend gave me this script, and I read it, and like, it's pretty good. Like, you should submit it. I found this playwriting competition that's happening in the summer. Like, you should apply to it." And I did, and I got accepted, and they liked my play, and I got to do a workshop of it for a week in Connecticut, which was amazing and such an incredible experience. And she's just kind of been my road dog. I think a lot of my teachers in my life have been big inspiration. And then of course my parents, they're hard workers. My mom's a professor, my dad's a businessman. So like I understand like both the business aspect and the importance of theater. I think my mom's being so big in education, I think wanting to teach people and talk to people has always just kind of been something that I've always loved doing. So yeah.
Yeah. I relate so much to that, and I know that question, it feels so weird to ask people that because I know for me too, it's like, I honestly don't know how to explain it because I feel like theater just chose me.
Yeah,
Like, I
right,
always had a calling to it, and I was
right,
like,
right, right,
"There's
right,
not really anything like that," and what reminds me so much of what you said about passion is, like, a lot of my professors would always say to me, "What makes a good artist is not their technique, but their passion for it," and I
right.
think it just shines through so much, and especially, like, in your writing too, like, to sit down on your free time and write, it's not the
Yeah.
easiest thing to do,
No,
so
no, it
I'm
is
so
not.
inspired by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you take us back to the first time that you experienced theater and how you were feeling at the time?
Sure. I'm gonna break this question up into two. I'm gonna talk about the first time I like saw theater, like really got to just like the first performance, and then the first show that I saw that I was like, oh, this is like the show that I want to do theater. Um, So the first like experience that I really remember was going to see Beauty and the Beast with my parents. Beauty and the Beast was my dad and I's movie. We went to Disney World. I was dressed up as Belle. We did like the whole shebang. And so it came to, I'm from outside of Philly. I'm from New Jersey, but Philly is like the closest city to me. And so we went to the Academy of Music and when the Beauty and the Beast tour was there. And I remember like climbing the steps, like all the way up to the top and whatnot. And I was like, oh, this is a lot, but this is so fun. And, watching Beauty and the Beast and with my dad and like this movie that I was so used to. And I remember like Be Our Guest. I was so inspired by that and just I thought that was so cool. And so yeah, Beauty and the Beast was like the first theatrical experience that I remember that I like felt akin to. Just because like it's my dad and I's thing. And so that was really special. And then the first show that I saw that I was like, oh, I want to do theater was Wicked at the Academy of Music again in Philly. I went with my summer camp at the time, and it was the first show that I saw with them. And funny enough, I don't remember, like, I didn't really remember the plot of Wicked at the time, which is crazy to say now, being the Wicked fan that I am. But I didn't remember anything. I literally only remembered As Long As You're Mine, like in the set from As Long As You're Mine, like not even like the characters or anything. But that was kind of that moment, and that had always like stuck with me for whatever reason, the set from As Long As You're Mine, and I would go through life and just be like, la di da di da, what is this weird memory I have of these like rope tree things. I don't know. And then the first time I saw Wicked again, um, I like it all came back and I was like, oh, I get it now. That was the first thing that I saw that really stuck with me. And Wicked was just like that moment of that clicked everything
Yeah.
together.
I relate to that so much because Wicked was my first Broadway show. I mean, your love for Wicked just heightens my love for Wicked. Like, love for Wicked just makes me so
Yeah.
happy. And I think now, like, it's always been like, oh my God, Wicked. But I think
Yeah.
now, movie, like, it's just blown it up so much more. And like,
Mhm.
all my friends, I mean, obviously, I'm the first person they come to when they go off
Yeah.
to Broadway because that's my entire personality. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the first show that you go see is Wicked. Like, that's always
Right.
the first show that I'll recommend to people because it's just so special and it's such a theater staple. Like there's no theater
Mhm.
without Wicked.
There's a that
That's
Wicked.
my standpoint on that.
Yeah.
So you attended New York University's Tisch School of the Arts to study
Yes.
dramatic writing. When did you realize that writing was your calling, and how did your experience there shape your creative journey?
Sure. I knew it was my calling in high school. It was after I won that competition that I realized because I was always writing things. I loved writing. I knew that I was going to be a writer in some regard. And then I discovered that like, oh, I can write scripts, like I can write dialogue. That's really cool. And I had actually written my first play in third grade. It was the sequel to James and the Giant Peach. It was called James Jr. It was about James's son, but it was the exact same plot of James and the Giant Peach, just with his son instead. And that was like the first play that I wrote. But I think it all, and I've always written plays since that moment, all the way up through high school. And I kind of like took a break in middle school. And then in high school, I was like, I'm gonna write a play. I'm gonna write a play. And then, like I said, my teacher had read it. She was like, "Submit to this," and I got accepted. And I realized I was like, "Oh, like people like my writing." And I had my friends had did a summer intensive at ballet class, and I got into this program, and I like had to tell my ballet teacher like, "I'm gonna be gone for a week. Like I can't. I'm not gonna be a camp, like a dance camp for this week, and she was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Is it possible, like, can my friends take off the Friday to, like, come up and see the show? Like, I would really, really love if they could come up and see the show." And she was like, "Okay, like, yes, you can have your, like," and it was, like, not a it was a lot of people. It was, like, maybe 7 of them in our class of 14. And so my teacher was like, "Ah, fine, 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 fine. Like, this is a big deal. Yes, you can have your friends come up." And so they all got in cars, they carpooled, and they came to see my show in Connecticut, which was lovely. And it was just kind of in that moment I was like, "Oh, people really like what I have to say." And I think that was the moment that I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is how I found I know I can do this. Like, this is something I can do, and I want to do." Um, yeah, and then in terms of, like, how NYU kind of shaped my education, I think just, like, getting into the city was, like, my always my goal, and I think by going to NYU, I was able to obviously accomplish that. I think too, like, that's one thing about that school is it's huge. Its alumni network is huge. And so you're always running into people that you like don't realize like, oh yeah, I went to NYU in this year. And I was like, oh, okay. Like all these people that I had looked up to, Winnie Holzman, who's the book writer of Wicked, huge, that's another huge inspiration in my life. I really aspire to write something that impacts other people the way Wicked has impacted me and her words have impacted me. She went to NYU. She was an NYU alumni. Susan Hilferty, also an NYU alumni, also a professor there. I worked with her. I was an intern for her. And
Oh,
I
she's
wouldn't have been
incredible.
able to do that without NYU. And so I think the thing that shaped me most was this industry is so much of networking and connection. I hate that word. Making connections with people. That I think that's one of the reasons why I liked NYU is like, oh, I was able to meet all these people who have shaped my way. And also, it's just like a talking point. It's such a large community of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I always say that. I was like, it's so weird to say, but connections are truly like the root
Mm.
of this industry. And it's so special, like what these connections can bring to you. Like for me, I got to write my first show about my journey, and I got to make
Oh,
my own Broadway
great.
debut at the Green Room 42 and do it with the people that shaped my journey. And it was
Yeah.
so hard. So it was my first time writing something that I felt
Mhm.
really meant a lot to me and getting to tell my story. And I love to write. Writing is my passion, and I feel like it's so weird as a writer when you sit down and you know that people are going to be seeing something. It's like, how can I make my story to make them feel something? And how can I inspire them? And I think it's just so cool for writers when you put yourself out there and you take your thoughts and put them into words and it just translates and impacts people and it stays with them for so long. And I just think that's the beauty of theater too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in addition to dramatic writing, you also studied costume design. How has studying costume design deepened your understanding of how costumes interact with other theatrical elements?
Yeah. I think it's important to note that like my love for costumes enhances my writing. Those two elements are very, very important to me in my process, just as a creative individual. I think so much of costumes influences character, like what we choose to wear it tells so much about ourselves. And so like I've always liked costumes. I just think it helps create richer stories, especially like getting to write like little things into scripts like, oh, she wore a white shirt. Like, why did she wear a white shirt? Oh, there's a reason if the writer is putting that into the script. Um, in terms of like, I'm trying to think, what else can I say to that? Can you repeat the question one more time? Because I go on tangents. I'm gonna say this
Oh,
now.
no, of course. Just how costuming has really impacted you and your passion for that and how it interacts with different theater elements.
Yes. In terms of interacting with other theater elements, again, back to what I said, character. Like that's just so much. I think too, like getting to work with other people and understanding that, like, yes, at the end of the day, like they're just clothes and everyone wears clothes, but I think it just is such an enhancer. Um, in any storytelling that you have and like getting to collaborate with like lights and costumes they really go hand in hand like you can't have someone wearing a red dress and having a red light on them that doesn't work the way colors like cancel each other out we see this in the Wicked movie like with the purple going over her green skin like things like that like I think the way that costumes interact it's such a little thing but also such a huge part of the process of creating theatrical work.
Yeah, it's such special tidbits that not a lot of people take the time to notice or appreciate. And I just think it's so cool when you kind of really dive into that and make sure that you're keeping a keen eye on that. You're like, oh, I never realized that, or this and this work together
Mhm,
hand in hand. And I think it's
mhm.
so cool when you pay attention to the little things because they make the whole masterpiece
Yeah.
there.
Especially like details in costumes too. Like there I love costumes so much. There's so
Awesome.
many things with it.
So you've designed so many incredible pieces, and the Wicked costumes that you made are definitely my personal standout. So what are some of your personal favorite design projects, and why do they stand out to you?
Um, okay, so my favorite design project was never actually like seen to fruition. In my senior year of college, we had to do our design final and we had to pick a show and design like the whole thing for it. And so I did Seussical. Fun fact on me, I love Seussical. It's my dream to
You.
like work on a production of Seussical at some point. But I think that might have been my one of my favorite projects just because it just you got to like dive into I think Seussicals too. It's like I grew up on the Dr. Seuss books. Like I have literally have the Sneetches book like on my bookshelf. That's one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. Um, I think too, like Seussical is just this musical that so many people do. Like it's ingrained in like middle school and regional theater culture. And so like wanting to design, getting to design my concept of it was one of probably one of my favorite things. And also like because I do wardrobe, I got to like make got to take like do paperwork and I love doing paperwork. I love organizing things and I have this like massive binder that's like this big that I just like will whip out and be like, "Oh, you want to do Seussical? You want to talk about Seussical? Look, I have this binder here.
Oh,
Let's
I
do
will
Seussical."
see that binder at some point.
I think that one was one of my favorite projects. And then in terms of like things that I actually got to make. I think my favorite one that I've ever made was my palm tree track costume. I think it's just like such a niche like costume in the Wicked world, and so many people on the internet like who know me for my costume know me for that, which I think is so so funny. But I think that one was one of my favorites. I think that was the first costume that I made that took like a lot of work and effort, and I like really put a lot of time and energy into making it the best that it could be. Um, yeah, so that was my other favorite one.
No, that's so awesome. I love that project though, and getting to like kind of take your own take on Seussical
Mhm,
and just like
mhm,
costumes because I feel like everyone knows the Dr. Seuss world and everyone knows how unique it is. So to kind
mhm.
of put your own spin on that, like honestly, you're not a theater kid if you haven't done something with Seussical.
Right.
Like it's just like it revolves around Seussical, and I just think it's so special.
It all comes back to Seussical.
Yes. So, alongside your incredible work in costumes, you're also a playwright, and you're currently working on your new play, Grey Mud. What drew
Yes.
you to playwriting, and what inspires you as a writer?
What inspires me is music, costumes, lighting, very moods, aesthetics. I think I'm a very visual person, so trying to build the actual world that I want my audience to sit in, I think is really important for my process at least. Inspiration music wise, I love Hosier. I love Hosier. I think if you haven't listened to Hosier, listen to Hosier. I think his storytelling is really phenomenal, and I think the storytelling within his music and specifically is also beautiful. Movie scores, the purpose of that music is storytelling. Movies are not movies without them. I think a composer who does that really well, who inspires me a lot, is John Powell. He wrote so many of my like favorite childhood movies, How to Train Your Dragon, Ice Age, The Lorax, 14 Years of Who. He also did the Wicked movie, which we can I could go on for days about that. But I think music is a really big factor for me. Lighting, I think that also goes hand in hand with my love for costumes. I love like neon aesthetics. I love blues and pinks and purples and just like how those worlds can just kind of collide and create this like vibe. I have my light bulbs in my room are color coded, so like I can press a button and like change the colors on my lights. And so sometimes like if I'm reading a scene out and there's a specific vibe that I want with it, I'll put that on with it. Costumes, I love fabric. Sometimes if I'm struggling with a character, I'll actually go out and shop for a look for them. Um, I did that for Grey Mud actually. went to TJ Maxx because the play is set in like in South Jersey, which is where I'm from. And so I went to a TJ Maxx in South Jersey and I was like, all right, what are women wearing here? What do we got to work with? And I found a couple pieces, then I like put that together and I said, okay, this is this character. This is what she would wear. I understand her better now because I understand how she would move in the clothes that she's wearing. Same thing with like fabric. If sometimes if I'm designing like a piece that's like big and crazy, I'll go to a fabric store and I'll swatch specifically and I'll create this kind of bundle of like the vibes of the clothing in this show, the fabrics that are in this show. Um, yeah, that's kind of what inspires me is a lot of visual elements and also titles. Titles, I know this is hit or miss with people. I know a lot of people will name their show or name their work project at the end of the whole process or like when they finish a draft. I'm a person like, nope, I need a title. I can't write something unless I have a title with it. Even if it's going to change. I think Gray Mud in particular changed the title changed 3 times. The first title was called Two Sleeps. The second title was called The Last Night in Oak Cabin, and then finally, like when I was getting to the end of draft 2, I want to say, I had written this monologue at the end, and the character had said something about feeling like she was in this gray area and feeling muddy and dirty and icky. And I was like, wait, gray mud, gray mud. And then that's how that came to be. So yeah.
Love how inspiration strikes while
Mhm.
you write, because obviously you need some sort of inspiration to strike when you start a project, so you kind of know what you're walking into. But how
Mhm.
you start and you just type away, I feel like you have the world at your fingertips.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful the way that you string words together and inspiration can strike throughout it. What do
Mhm.
you think really drew you toward playwriting, like that specific form of writing?
I like to talk a lot. This was always an issue that I had in elementary school when we would do like the creative storytelling units and for the like 4 years in a row. I always loved doing that. I always loved writing stories. And I remember I had written the story in elementary school and my teacher like gave me my grade back and I like didn't do well on it per se. And the reason why was because she was like, dialogue's great. Like, I'm glad that your characters are talking. Unfortunately, like, you have to put some description in it. Like, they can't just talk the whole time. And so I think and then I learned what playwriting was, and I was like, oh, wait, people can write just people talking? Well, that's great. Um, yeah, so that's part of it was that I just only wrote dialogue when I would write stories anyways, so it just made sense to write plays. Again, I talk a lot. I love talking. Love talking. It's my favorite thing in the world. Ask anybody. I call myself a yapper. I'm a designated yapper. That's another one. And then I think the last reason would be, well, there was one more reason why I got into playwriting. Oh, I'm an only child. I didn't spend like I spent time alone. I was used to being like independent, and I think I would make up characters all the time. I would make alter egos for myself, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm like playing around with my alter ego today. I'm this person today." I love stepping into my character's shoes. And I think that was really fun. I think that's also why I loved acting when I was younger. But yeah, I would always make up characters and I would make those characters talk. And I always played with always had Barbie dolls to play with and I was always like having them talk. And if I didn't have Barbie dolls, I would find other things to play with. Like my dad is a chess master. And so when I was a kid, we had so many chess sets growing up. And I think I got to a point where like my mom had thrown out my Barbie dolls or like I don't know, they got lost in the move, something happened. They went missing. And I was like, I want to play with something. And so I think I had found a chess set and I would like pour them all out and I was like, oh, la, 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 and they all just kind of talked to each other. But yeah, and I think that was also another reason why I was like, well, playwriting is a good fit for me because I always was making up stories as a kid.
Yeah. What I think is so cool about playwriting too, I mean, for me as an actor, my favorite thing about being an actor is stepping into somebody else's shoes and
Mhm.
playing pretend and kind of getting to know them and your perception of them. But what I
Yeah.
think is so cool when you're a playwright is you have to do that with every single character because you're working them from the ground up. So when
Yeah.
you're writing dialogue for one person, you're like, okay, I'm in this headspace now, and then now I'm in
Mhm.
this headspace. And I think it's so cool and so crazy how you can bounce back and forth and just kind of get into the headspace of all these different characters and kind of just create them as if they're people.
Yeah.
It's so special. So, can you walk us through your creative process as a playwright?
Sure. Um, it depends on the project that I'm working on, but I would say the most like consistent process that I have is I handwrite most of the things that I work on. Um, and once I kind of get an idea of like what the story is and what I want the whole overarching theme and idea to be, that's when I'll take out my computer and start typing it. Um, but I did this exercise in college and I didn't think I was gonna like it. I was very anti anything that wasn't playwriting or musical theater writing in college because everyone was like, oh, you won't do anything if you're a playwright, which different whole other story. But we did this exercise in my screenwriting class where basically my professor told us to write down anywhere from 15 to 30 things that we just wanted to see in the project that we were working on. And so like that could be anything, anything from lighting, music, a line that you wanted a character to say, visuals, just literally anything, like the aesthetic of it. And so my process always starts with that exercise is I will write down all the things that I want to see, hear, feel, emotions I want to evoke, themes, colors, all that jazz. And then I'll go back and I will circle like 10 of those things that I really want to see in this visually or just in general. And so I'll go and do that. And then I don't always plot out my scripts, but recently Gray Mud was a really big one that I did. I think mostly because Gray Mud went goes back and forth in time. So just making sure I had an understanding of like how everything was going to work. Um, so then I'll go out and I'll plot out like what's happening in each scene, or if I don't know specifically what's happening, like an idea of what's gonna happen. And then I'll do a little bit of writing. Sometimes I free write, sometimes I will just write like a script, but I'll usually handwrite that out. And then we start writing a script, and then we hopefully finish it. I'm um really big on deadlines. I try to give myself usually a month, month and a half to like write a full length play. And I'll put dates in my calendar, like you need to have 15 pages done by this time. You need to have 60 pages done by this date. And I'll just kind of keep myself on track there. And then we have one draft done in like a month or so, give or take. And then we rewrite it. We rewrite the whole thing from scratch. Page one rewrites. And then we just keep rewriting. I'll do a reading, usually a second or third draft. And then we just keep going. We keep rewriting and taking notes and changing things and playing around. And that's typically my process of writing anything. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that exercise because I know a lot of writers, and in my theater class recently, we had to write our own pieces, and a lot of us were just sitting there like, okay, I don't know what to start with. And I
Yeah.
just think that exercise is so cool because you could sit there for hours and be like, I don't know what to write about. So I think
Actually,
that
I
exercise
think I
is so,
have, if you want a visual, because this is also on what's it called? On like on the screen, right?
yeah.
This is a play that went nowhere, but this is my play. It was called the Guillotine Play. We never finished it, but I just all these different ideas that I wrote down. I didn't end up going back through and actually, oh, maybe I did. I didn't end up going through and like circling things on that one, but this is kind of the idea of it, and I'll do this like for the whole page too. So
So
that's my process.
I love that process. It's very organized and it has its steps and you kind of know how to follow it and it
Yeah,
translates in the writing. I really love that.
yeah.
So, can you share a little bit about Grey Mud and what it's about and how that concept came to life?
Sure. Gray Mud tells a story of a camp counselor named Rachel who is kind of dealing with past trauma and it's a play that explores how we deal with trauma and sexual assault specifically as women. Um, And so it talks about that, it talks about breaking down of friendships, it's about growing up as a girl, being a girl and a woman is crazy, and I think the reason this idea came to me because I was just thinking about, like, all these things that had happened in, like, my youth of in terms of just, like, being a girl, like, things people would say to me, and I was like, "Why do we say that to, like, young girls? Like, why is that an okay thing to say?" Like, this idea that boys are mean to girls if they have a crush on them. I was like, why do we do that? Because, like, that's not nice. Like, there was a boy that was very mean to me in elementary school, and everyone would always tell me, like, "Oh, he just likes you." But I'm like, "But that doesn't seem right." Like, if someone likes me, they shouldn't be mean to me. And so just, like, going through all these things that, like, were really weird as a as a girl, and I was like, "Okay, let's, like, talk about this. Let's unpack all of these little things that happen that we don't talk about enough in our society." And then in terms of, like, the nature of sexual assault, that we don't talk about nearly enough as we need to. It happens to so many people, both men and women, and everybody else as well. It happens to everyone. And I just think that's something that I really wanted to bring to the forefront of conversations. That's the whole purpose of why I write, at least, is I want to get people starting conversations and I want people to think a little bit. And so, yeah, that's how Gray Mud kind of came to be. And I'm really excited to share it, in the future, in the next couple months.
That's beautiful, and I relate to that so much too as an actor and as an avid theater goer. I hate saying this, and I hate that it's our society, and people like you are working so hard to change that, and I'm so inspired. It's when people are like, "Oh, I don't want to see that show because it's a touchy subject." It's something that
Mhm.
happens in the real world, and people don't want to think of that as entertainment,
Right.
whether it is different disorders, like you said,
Mhm.
sexual assault, things like that. People are
Yeah,
like, "I don't want to see that." But I think it is so important that we tap into that because I think theater is the most beautiful way to tell a story. I will stand by that till the day I die. And I think it's so important that when you tap into that and you speak about important subjects that people normally shy away from, it sparks conversations, it sparks questions, and it just makes us a better society. And I just think that that's so
right.
special. And that's why pieces like Grey Mud are so, so special.
Yeah. I think, like, that's the whole point of theater is it is real life. Like, it is. You always will get something out of it that affects you in your everyday, day to day. Um, so yeah, I'm also, like, trying to I try and write things that scare me personally because I think that's how we get to the root of the problems in our world. Like, if it's bothering me, it's probably bothering someone else. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. So, alongside your work as a playwright, you are also a dresser at the Outsiders on Broadway. What does the role of a dresser entail, and what made you decide to pursue being a dresser professionally?
Yes. So the role of a dresser is we are basically a liaison between the actors and their costumes. We do a bunch of different things. One of the main ones is making sure that all the costumes look the best that they can possibly be in, at least for on Broadway, and generally speaking, to uphold that standard and help continue the designer's vision onto the stage. We hand out laundry, we collect laundry at the end of the night, we'll do repairs if need be, we help with quick changes, we preset quick changes, preset changes in general. Sometimes I always joke about this, we're also like their therapist as well. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but those are the main jobs of a dresser. And then in terms of like what made me want to get into it, I mean, playwriting isn't very lucrative. If you want to be a playwright, understand that you won't make a lot of money in it. And that's okay. It's one of those jobs that like you have to have passion to do. Same with like most things in this industry. But I knew that I always liked working with costumes, and because I had studied costume design in college and realized that like, oh, I don't really think like this is for me. It's a level of stress that I don't like really want to endure in my day to day. Um, I was like, well, I still want to be involved in costumes. I have a love for costumes. Um, I discovered what dressing was and I said, oh, I think that could be for me. And it gives me the freedom to also continue still write. On top of that, I really wanted to be an actor when I was younger. And then I quickly realized, like, I don't like auditioning. I have no desire to audition, but I wanted to work in a theater every day and I wanted to be surrounded by creative people. I wanted to be surrounded by actors. And I was like, dressing. That'll keep me in a theater. It'll keep me around actors. It'll keep me around creative people. Um, And so yeah, and that's how we're here, and that was kind of the reason why I went into dressing.
That's so special. How did you hear about dressing?
There is another dresser, named Teal Dvornik. She also similar to me, she was before my time, before me. She made content on being a dresser and what it's like working on Broadway. And I had discovered her in high school and I learned what she did and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I told my drama teacher in high school, I said, "I think being a dresser is might be the move for me. Like I recently learned what it was. I think that might be the move to make money as I try to be a playwright." And she was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "We actually have an alumni who is a dresser currently." And she was working on Mean Girls at the time. And so I had gone to see Mean Girls with my mom and my teacher had put us in contact with each other and we met and I talked to her about being a dresser and she was like, "Yeah, I think that's," and I told her my plan and she said, "I think that sounds like a good idea." And so that was kind of the moment I was like, "Okay, I think this is my plan. I think my plan is to be a dresser while I try and be a playwright."
Oh, that's awesome. So what does a typical day look like for you as a dresser on The Outsiders?
A typical day as a dresser is like 4 to 5 hours long. So, um, on days that I only have 1 show, it's a lot of, like, sleeping, chores, doing my, like, adult duties that I don't wanna do, and then also sometimes, like, taking that time for myself and reading and writing and whatnot. But then my call time is about an hour and a half before curtain, and so we get there and we help. I will come in, I'll collect the laundry, and I'll go ahead and drop it off. Um, and then you go ahead and you do your presets. If you have to set something on stage, you go and do that. If you have to preset costumes in certain places in the theater, you'll go and you'll do that. And then you get half hour and you wait, you see if your actors need anything, see if anything's missing that you maybe missed when you were going through your presets. And then the show starts and you do your changes and you finish the show and then you go home. And that's a typical day. It's a little bit different obviously on every show because every show is different. But that's typically it.
Oh, that sounds like dream life.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite part of being a dresser on the show, and what challenges come with it?
Mhm. My favorite part about being a dresser, specifically on Outsiders, is the changes. Like, they're so crazy because we have blood and we have rocks and
Mhm.
water, and there's so many little, like, elements that I'm like, "This is crazy." I think my favorite part of being a dresser on any show are my quick changes, when I get them right, when I get them right. When I mess them up, then I'm like, "Okay, I hate this, I don't ooh, why?"
So real.
But I think doing any quick change on a show is always my favorite part. I think to like specifically on Outsiders because our cast is so young and so green in the Broadway world. It's really cool getting to see like them just live their dreams out and we have a lot of new people coming in every so like in recent times we've had so many new people and they're all making their debuts or they're only like this is only their second show, so just like getting to watch people like get to do this thing is really awesome and awesome and special.
Yeah, and that show is just such a special show and such a special family. I mean, the people are the absolute sweetest. It's so special.
Yeah.
So, as we said, the show features dramatic moments like the Rumble, which possesses you have water, blood, you got dirt. Thank you, Best Directed Dirt on Broadway. You have the EDM, you have fire, you have it
Yeah.
all. So, what's it like managing these details behind the scenes and ensuring that everything runs smoothly?
Well, the rocks get everywhere. The EDPM gets everywhere. I think I made the mistake of like accidentally wearing Crocs to work, and I was like, "Oh, this was a
Oh,
horrid decision, Brie Leftwich." Um, but yeah, I mean, and rocks everywhere. We have a lot of towels in our show. We go through.
thank you throwing in the towel.
Yes, we have. I think 15 like bath towels, like shower towels that we use per show. Um, Yes, and then we have a bunch of, like, little towels. There's a lot of towels in our show. There's a lot of, like we sometimes have a lot of wet wipes, that we go through because blood will get places. I get blood on myself every so often. I'm like, "Okay, gotta wipe that down. Can't leave the theater with this fake blood on me, otherwise I don't wanna know what might happen."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of just, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's just a lot. There's a lot of
Beautiful chaos. Beautiful chaos.
beautiful chaos. Yes. We've gotten it more under control since opening. So
Yeah.
it's smoother now. It's
Yeah.
much more smooth. Sailing. My favorite is like at the end of the show. The last literally 15 to 20 minutes of the show is just cleaning up from the
Mhm.
rubble, sorting clothes and laundry. And I think that's always fun because I get to talk to our laundry person and we we do a bit where it's like when we see a lot of blood on a shirt, we're like, no, what happened to them? um,
Oh. Do you have any like pre-show rituals or any like things that you do during the show every day?
Yes, I me and Corey's one of our props people, we dance for the car backing up, during Talk to You All Night.
Oh yeah.
We dance for Dan Barry, we have a whole
Yes.
choreographed dance, and we do that every show. This is newer, this is in the last, like, 2 months. During intermission, we have, like, these letters on one of the musicians like lockers, and I come downstairs every day, and if there isn't a quote already written on the board, like I'll write one out, and I always try to put my name in it because I'm myself and I love myself most of the time.
Oh.
um but I'll go ahead and do that. I'm trying to think if there's any other like pre-show traditions. That's pretty much it. Oh, I also give high fives. I'll give out
Okay.
high fives.
Do you have a favorite quick change that you do or a favorite moment in the show, favorite song in the show, favorite
Yeah.
scene?
I my favorite song in slash scene in the show is Run Run Brother. Um, that's it's just so good. The
Yeah.
storytelling in that scene is incredible. And then in terms of my favorite quick change, my favorite quick change is Bob Cobb. Like,
Yep.
yeah,
Always. I
that's
know, I was telling Kevin, and I joke about this with him all the time, I'm like, I think it's the funniest thing that you play the cop investigating your own murder, like,
yeah,
it's my favorite thing. Like,
yeah.
that's when I saw the show for the first time, I was like, "Okay, Kevin's the cop. Great."
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
think that
"I
that's
love
my
it."
favorite. That might be my favorite change,
Uh,
especially, like, because it's during Run Run Brother, there's, like, by the time we finish, the change is when the chorus starts, and so I get to do this fun little, like, walk and strut down our hallway with my basket of, like, bloody clothes, and I'm like, "Dee dee 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 dee," and I drop it off, and it's fun to, like, walk in rhythm with things, it's great.
I love it, and I have to ask about I think I heard this from you or maybe someone else on the show said it, but the, quick change for when they run into the fire, they have the fireproof clothes, and then they have exact replicas of the clothes that aren't fireproof. I want your dresser perspective on this because I remember hearing that and being like, "Oh my goodness, that's insane."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we wanna keep safety, especially on this show, is very, very important to us, and so we have fireproof clothing of our costumes, for Brody, for the Dally track, and for Sky as well, and they change into those, and then they change out of those,
Yeah.
because those costumes can't get wet.
Yeah.
If they get wet, they can't go through the fire,
Mhm.
and that has happened a couple of times where we're like, "Oop, we accidentally steamed it, can't be used, can't do the fire, gotta go a different way." So yeah, it's a safety thing. It's not anything special. He comes in, he changes, and then he goes back out on stage.
It's so cool from a, like, costume perspective because I mean, you see it a lot, and not so many shows are as intricate as this one is with their costuming and their quick change, and I
Mhm.
think it's so cool, and I feel like that kinda transitions into our next question beautifully because the production is set in 1967, and the costumes, I feel like they really tell the story of the era. So how does it feel for you personally to apply your knowledge of costume design to a show like this where the design plays such an integral role in setting the tone?
Um, I mean, I don't have a huge, part in the costume design process. I really no part at all. My only job is to continue the vision of our designers. Um, but it's fun, like, getting to see him like, "Oh, this is" like, when we, did Good Morning America, we had to walk from our theater to where the Good Morning America set was. So it was really funny, like, having all our peoples, like, in their their period costumes, walking down the streets of New York where, like, people are wearing, like, beat headphones and sneakers and jeans and all these like fun crop tops and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. Um, yeah, but I mean, I don't really have anything to do with like the design and the look of it other than maintaining it. Um, but I think it's fun. It's fun getting to work on a period show.
Yeah, it's so special when something's a period piece because I feel like The Outsiders is so timeless. Because
Mhm.
like, for me, like, getting to study it in the 2000s was so cool when it takes place in 1967 and seeing how, everything translates in present day and, now getting to see that reflected on stage, I feel like the costumes really solidify that story and solidify the timing of it. So, The Outsiders is your fifth Broadway show. Can you reflect on your past experiences on Broadway and how they've shaped your growth? Kind of take us through your Broadway journey?
Yeah, I mean, this is my first full-time job. So that's in itself is very exciting, and I'm very lucky to be 24 and have worked on 5 Broadway shows and have the opportunity to work on Broadway shows when I was even still in college. Um, so that's really cool. I think working on a show that's so successful, um, is amazing considering that my first show was very unsuccessful. The first show that I worked on was K-pop the musical. It opened and only lasted for 2 weeks. I had gotten my first job. I worked as a costume PA, so I did work on the design team on that show. And then I was fortunate enough to be in contact with my supervisor, who is also my supervisor on Outsiders, and I talked to her and she was like, "We would love to bring you on as like a swing dresser and as, day work." And I said, "Okay, great." And I think I had only worked 2 shifts, and then on my 3rd shift, I was, like, called my, like, boss had called me and he, like, told me, like, she's like, "Hey, can we talk really quick?" And I was like, "Oh my god, what did I do?" Nothing. I did nothing, but she told us that our show was closing that weekend, and I was supposed to start training that weekend, and I remember being so heartbroken that I was like, "Oh, like, this was my Broadway debut, like, I would've gotten into dressing, like, I was so excited, I think that that was just so heartbreaking to get so close and not be able to do it. Um, and then, you live and you learn, but we went through we had t I worked on 3 other shows. I worked on Bad Cinderella, and again, not the most successful show. Lasted longer, lasted a month. But, still it was still really sad and, like, I know Bad Cinderella is always people always, like, roll their eyes when they talk about it, but, like, when you get to work on a show and you get to live a dream, like, that's something special. I don't think that's something that everyone considered, and also, like, people are losing their jobs. Like, you can dislike a show all you want, but at the end of the day, like, someone works here. Someone is putting the time and effort every day, and I think, like, I didn't get to dress on that show, but I got to do day work, and I was so excited to come in every Saturday at 9 AM and steam ball gowns and look for holes in costumes and just be like, "Oh, look at this ball gown, like, it's huge, there's 10 layers of tulle on it, I have to go through every single one." And then my next show was Shucked, and that was the first show that I got to work on that like, I got to work on, and that was also the first show that I was a dresser on, and again, like, even when that closed, that was, like that one was really that was hard. That was a hard show, because I think I discovered a lot about myself working on that show. But yeah, and then working on Moulin Rouge, like, I met some of my dear, dear friends on that show, and a lot of, like, people who inspire me, as a just, like, to be a better human on that show. So yeah, it's been a journey, but, like, reflecting back, I think you get you how do I wanna say this? You'll end up where you need to be, and just not giving up and not get letting, the way the industry works get you down. Because at the end of the day, like, it's a business, and if our show's not making money, the show's not gonna stay open. If people aren't liking the show's not gonna stay open. Um, and I think just getting to work on a show that closed so quickly after its opening, to working on a show that stayed open a little longer and a little longer, and just working on a show, Moulin Rouge, that has been open for 5 years now, like, just slowly getting to see that increase of time getting to spend on a show. I was like, "Great." Like, it's a journey. It's a sprint, not a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
And it's so beautiful. I know it's so cliche, but I truly believe in it. What's meant for you doesn't pass you by. And I think it's so special for you personally to have taken what you love and what you have a passion for to all these different incredible environments on such a large medium like Broadway. That must have been such
Yeah.
an incredible journey.
Yeah.
Is there a defining project or moment that truly shaped who you are today from a career standpoint?
Think I mean, as a dresser, I mean, Moulin Rouge. Working on Moulin Rouge was probably one of my favorite experiences, and I had only worked there, I think, for maybe 2 or 3 months. It wasn't very long, but I remember working on that show, and I had learned so much about myself, um, because, I've always been one of the youngest people, like, at least on the wardrobe team, whenever like, at a lot of the shows that I worked on. Um, and Moulin Rouge, I think, was, like, the first show that I got to work on with people that were, like, closer to my age, and so, like, they just had so much, like, advice to give me, and it was very special, and it was very sweet, and that was the first show that I worked on where I didn't know the wardrobe supervisor beforehand, and I, like, had to, like, prove myself, like, "I promise I'm good at what I do." Um, but I think Moulin Rouge was one of those really defining moments in my career, in terms of, like, "Oh, here I am on this long-running musical that is fast." It's so hard, it's difficult, and I think I realized that I was like, "Oh, I'm capable of a lot more than, than I thought I was." In terms of, like, in terms of, like, playwriting, I mean, I guess, like, that defining moment was, there was a time in college where I had written a play at 2 AM. I wrote it in, like, maybe 3 hours, and I just didn't care. Like, I truly, truly, truly didn't care. It only went through 1 draft, and I think I just was like, "Okay, I wrote this play, great. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I wrote it." And then I, had found out about a short play festival at school, and I was like, "Ah, let's just submit it. Like, who cares? Like, I like this play. I think it's good. I'm gonna submit it. Who cares? It's crazy, it's stupid, but it's wonderful." And that was the first thing that I got into. Like, first play that I had written in college that, like, got into a festival, and I think that it just kinda goes to show you, like, take yourself seriously, but not too seriously, and believe in your work. Like I said, like, I'm a perfectionist, and that play was written with no perfectionism in sight, just simply whatever the brain wanted to write at 2 AM was what the brain wrote at 2 AM. Um, and people liked it, and my best friend to this day, she's like, "I know you've written some really cool pieces, but that 10-minute play that you wrote at 2 AM in 3 hours, best thing I've ever written." So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. When you get to do what you love and, not worry about it too much. And I mean, that really speaks to your talent too, writing it at 2 AM. That's so special.
Yeah.
So, looking back on everything you have achieved in this industry, what advice would you give your younger self entering the industry?
Believe in yourself more. I wish I believed that I was good at what I did when I was younger. Younger. um, yeah, like I said, I'm a perfectionist. Because I did ballet, I care so much about like what other people think. Um, and I think there's a level of like you just have to know that like what you're doing is right. And you will make mistakes. We're humans. That's what we do. We make mistakes. But I wish I believed in myself and, like, what I was able to do and that I'm good at what I do. There's always that level of doubt that's gonna creep in, and that's okay. We need doubt to keep us safe, keep us grounded, but sometimes you gotta really just, like, forget and, like, "Nope, nope, we're not gonna listen to that part of me today. Today, like, I know that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do my job right." And I think that took me a little while to really grasp, and even now I still like having this job that I on a track that I got to set up. I'm still like I feel like I'm not good at what I'm doing, but like no, I'm here. My actors appreciate the things that I'm doing and that I always try to bring light into any situation that I end up in. And yeah.
It's so special. I mean, my personal motto growing up and still to this day has always been "Don't stop believing." And I
Mhm.
always say, like, if you believe it, you can do it. You just gotta reach for the stars sometimes. And like you said, the tracks that it puts you on, like it's things that you've always dreamed of. And it's so special when you get to live that and that gets to be a reality.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brie, for joining me on the Inspiration Show. It was such an honor to have you here and to get to watch you shine. I look up to you so much, so this was so special. I'm in constant awe of your incredible talent and work. Thank you so much for inspiring me.
Having me. I'm glad that I can do that for you.